In the final days of April 1945, as Soviet shells pulverized Berlin and the Reich he swore would last 1,000 years crumbled to dust, Adolf Hitler sat hunched in his underground bunker. His hands trembled. His breath came in ragged gasps. Saliva flecked his lips as he screamed at ghosts of generals he had long since executed or driven to suicide. This was no strategic mastermind. This was a man lost inside his own delusion. A failed artist turned messianic tyrant who believed his iron will could bend history itself. He refused to listen. He refused to retreat. He refused reality. And because one man's madness could not be questioned, an empire died in fire. Welcome to Hitler's delusional world. The 5 catastrophic military and political mistakes that didn't just lose the war, they proved his genius was always. Mistake 1. The halt order at Dunkirk, May 1940. The panzers were roaring. France had collapsed in 6 weeks. The British Expeditionary Force, 338,000 men, was trapped against the sea at Dunkirk, backs to the channel, ammunition spent. Field Marshal Walter von Brauchitsch and the tank commanders begged to finish the job. One more push, they pleaded. The British are finished. Hitler said no. For 3 precious days he froze the advance. Göring had whispered that the Luftwaffe alone could annihilate the trapped army from the air. Hitler, still drunk on the lightning victory over France, listened to the sycophant instead of his generals. In his mind, he was already a god, risking precious panzers in the muddy Flanders lowlands. Beneath him, let the Luftwaffe prove German air supremacy. Let the world see his mercy, or so he later claimed. The result? Operation Dynamo. Fishing boats, yachts, destroyers. The miracle flotilla ferried nearly the entire British army to safety. Those men would return in 1944 as the backbone of D-Day. Hitler's delusion had just handed Britain its lifeline, and he never admitted the error. In his fevered mind, every decision was infallible. Generals who disagreed were cowards or traitors. The pattern was set. Mistake 2. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, June 1941. While Britain still breathed, Hitler turned east. On the 22nd of June 1941, 3 million German soldiers surged across a 1,800-mile front into the Soviet Union, codenamed Barbarossa. His generals had warned him. Logistics officers showed maps of vast distances, primitive roads, winter coming. Intelligence reports spoke of endless Soviet reserves. Hitler waved them away with a single sentence that still chills the blood. We have only to kick in the door, and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down. He believed it. This was not strategy. This was racial fantasy. Lebensraum. The subhuman Slavs would collapse in weeks. He had read no serious history of Napoleon's 1812 disaster. He needed no facts. His will was enough. He sacked Field Marshal von Brauchitsch and took personal command of the army. When generals begged to drive straight for Moscow, the political and rail heart of the USSR, Hitler screamed, "My generals know nothing of economics," and diverted entire armies south toward Kiev and the Caucasus oil fields. Precious weeks vanished. By December, German troops stood in summer uniforms outside Moscow as temperatures plunged to -40. Frostbite claimed more men than bullets. Soviet counterattacks smashed the frozen Wehrmacht. Over 900,000 German casualties in 6 months. The myth of invincibility died in the snow. Hitler's paranoia deepened. Any general suggesting withdrawal was accused of defeatism. In his bunker, surrounded by maps he could no longer read without glasses, he doubled down. The East was his obsession, and it would devour the Reich. Mistake 3. Declaring war on the United States, December 1941. 4 days after Pearl Harbor, Hitler strode into the Reichstag and declared war on America. No treaty forced him. Japan had not asked. His own foreign minister Ribbentrop was stunned. The United States was already supplying Britain and the Soviets with mountains of steel, planes, and tanks through Lend-Lease. Hitler knew the American industrial colossus. He had written about it in Mein Kampf. Yet, in that moment of messianic euphoria, he believed the war was already won. Japan would tie down the US Navy in the Pacific. Germany would finish Europe before American boots ever touched French soil. His generals stared in disbelief. They understood what one man's hubris could not. America's factories would now pour endless resources into both theaters. Two-front war became three-ocean war. Hitler's reasoning, pure delusion. The Americans are a mongrel race, he sneered. They will never fight like Germans, in his mind. Willpower trumped production statistics. Reality disagreed. By 1944, American factories produced more tanks in a month than Germany managed in a year. The declaration sealed the Third Reich's fate. One political signature, born of arrogance, brought the sleeping giant fully awake. Mistake 4. The madness at Stalingrad. 1942-1943. Summer 1942, the German Sixth Army under General Friedrich Paulus reached the Volga. The city bore Stalin's name. Hitler fixated on it like a man possessed. His generals begged him to bypass the ruined city and seize the Caucasus oil fields, the real strategic prize. All wins wars, they pleaded. Hitler raged. Stalingrad must be taken. Prestige over petroleum, symbolism over survival. As Soviet forces built up on the vulnerable flanks, Paulus radioed for permission to withdraw or at least consolidate. Hitler's reply was ice. The Sixth Army will hold its positions to the last man and the last round. When Field Marshal von Manstein organized a relief force and begged for a breakout, Hitler screamed down the phone, "I will not leave the Volga." Inside his Wolf's lair, the man who once conquered France now lived on amphetamines and rage. His left arm shook with the first tremors of Parkinson's. His eyes burned with paranoid fire. Every suggestion of retreat was treason, every general a potential conspirator. On the 31st of January 1943, Paulus surrendered what remained of his army to 91,000 frozen, starving ghosts. Total German losses, over 750,000, the turning point of the war. From that moment, the Wehrmacht never regained the strategic initiative. Hitler's refusal to listen had sacrificed an entire army on the altar of his ego. Mistake 5. The Ardennes Gamble, the Battle of the Bulge, December 1944. By late 1944, Germany was bleeding from every vein. The Red Army was at the gates of Warsaw. The Western Allies were across the Rhine. Fuel was almost gone. Yet Hitler summoned his last panzer divisions for one final, insane offensive through the Ardennes forest, the same route that had worked in 1940. His generals warned him it was suicide. Fuel shortages, lack of air cover, American industrial might all pointed to disaster. Hitler planned the entire operation in secret, locking experienced commanders out of the room. "This will be my greatest victory," he declared, eyes gleaming with the same delusional fire that had launched Barbarossa. He dreamed of splitting the Allied armies, capturing Antwerp, forcing a separate peace, fantasy. On the 16th of December, the attack began in thick fog. For a few days it looked possible, then the skies cleared. Allied air forces slaughtered the panzers. Fuel ran out. The offensive stalled. Germany lost its last mobile reserves, minus 100,000 men, 600 tanks, and assault guns for nothing. By then Hitler was a physical wreck, a stoop, trembling, ranting at shadows. His paranoia had consumed him. He trusted no one. He believed only in his own destiny, even as Berlin burned above his head. 5 mistakes. 5 moments when one man's refusal to listen to reality wrote history in blood. The cost of Hitler's delusional world. 50 to 80 million dead, the bloodiest conflict in human history. Entire nations erased. The Holocaust, 6 million Jews systematically murdered because his racial madness demanded it. Germany itself was split in two, its cities reduced to rubble, its people starving in the ruins of their forest dream. He died by his own hand on the 30th of April 1945. Broken shell who had dragged the world into hell rather than admit he was wrong. His generals had been right all along, but in the delusional world of Adolf Hitler, truth was treason and retreat was death. The lesson echoes across the decades. When a single mind places its ego above strategy, above facts, above humanity itself, empires do not fall slowly, they burn. This was Hitler's delusional world. And the price was everything.